Hey guys, today I am going to do my face makeup and talk about when I first moved here from France. Honestly wish that I didn't look like an egg, but that's life. I was originally born here in the States. I'm the only one of my siblings who was born here in the States. My sister and my brother were born in France. I first grew up in Normandy. My sister, my mom, and my broski, we lived in Elbeuf in Normandy. My stepdad at the time, whose name was Cyril. So we lived in the cité. At that time, I was in kindergarten, preschool, something like that. I went to a private school. Man, I hated that school. That school was absolutely awful for me, not gonna lie. But anyway, when we lived in Elbeuf with Cyril, around that time my dad got cancer. We weren't living with my dad. My dad lived here in the States. So he came to France because, well, the treatment for his cancer was more affordable in France. And that was the first time I met him, or that I remember him. And I remember when he first came, I called him Vincent by his first name because that's what my mom called him. But then I was hearing like my sister and my brother calling him Papa. And I was, so I'm gonna call you Papa now. So I started calling my dad Papa. I have a very vivid memory of meeting my dad. I just remember seeing this big guy and I was like, and my mom was like, "This is Vincent, your dad." And I was like, "Oh my god, hi Vincent, how are you?" And yeah, well, he didn't stay with us, but he came to visit. Apparently, like, he would go get chemotherapy, and then afterwards, he would drive from, like, the hospital to come see us, and, like, a lot of the time, he would have to pull over and puke off, like, the highway. Once he was all bueno and good to go and his cancer was gone, my brother left with him to the States. And after my brother left, my mom met someone else, and we ended up moving to go live with him. His name was Jean-Luc. And I remember when we went, he was the principal of a middle school, I believe. And he literally lived right across from it. And he lived in it was like a townhome, but it was just two of them, and he owned the whole thing. So when we moved there, my mom had one townhome, he had the other one, but they ended up putting a door to connect the two. So that was just one big house. By that time, we lived in Montélimar. Don't know if I said that already or not. That's where I had my first boyfriend. T. So his name, coincidentally, was Vincent also. He had my father's name. And he was not attractive, like, whatsoever. But the reason as to why I went out with him is because I felt sorry for him. Because a lot of people, like, made fun of how big he was and stuff like that. So I was like, sure. But I ended up, like, really liking him. He was such a sweetheart. Oh my god. He was pretty funny too. But, and when I was younger, my friends and I, we would play this game where, like, this is really sexist game. Like, when I say it, I'm surprised that we even played this game. But the guys would chase the girls, and the guys would have to catch the girls, and then that was it. Like, it was practically tag, except it was the guys were the ones who were it. And I remember Vincent got me, and he pinned me up against the fence, and he was like this. Like, he was in front of me. He had his arms, like, beside me. And I was like, oh, shoot. So I was like, hey, Vincent, close your eyes. And he was like, okay. And so he closed his eyes, and he started going like this. And he started leaning in, and he was just like... And I just ducked underneath his arm and ran. And I was laughing so hard, and, like, so were my friends. But then when I think about it now, that is so mean. That is such a mean thing to do. But anyway, although the teachers that I had hated me. Like, every single teacher that I had absolutely hated me. And it was because my mom was American. So they took it out on me. Like, They would embarrass me in front of the class. They just did a lot of mean things. My best friend, we still talk, okay? Well, he's not my best friend, but we've been friends since we were kids. His name is Carl, and his sister Laurine. And so his sister and my sister are like best friends. And when my mom like would go to Africa to do meetings and all that jazz, we would stay with them. And I used to have the biggest crush on Carl. Like, I remember once my sister and Carl and Lorraine, they pranked me, okay? So we were all hanging out at my sister and I's house. So my sister was like, hey, Carl is in your room. You should go kiss him. And the lights were out in my room. And I thought that Carl was on the bed because I saw a shadow. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to go up and like kiss him and it's going to be great. So I go in there and I'm like leaning and I like go and I'm just like literally looking around my room like. And then I ended up falling on the bed. The light turns on and my sister and Lorraine and Carl all standing there laughing at me and I was like, wanna fight? You wanna go? Yeah, that was pretty funny. Leaving was really hard. I remember that was really hard. Partially because I didn't really understand why we were leaving, and I still don't know why we left. I think my mom wanted us to be closer to our family, which is understandable. It's a little hard talking about moving here. But anyway, so we lived in Montsouris-Mer. Carl, Laurine, Chloe, and I were having the time of our lives. I had my boyfriend, Vincent. One day, I don't really remember this that well, but, you know, like, hey, we're moving to the States. Surprise! And we were like, all right. But we moved out of the house with Jean-Luc. Also, my mom wasn't happy with Jean-Luc. We ended up living with my godmother's sister. She had a little chateau in the countryside, and so we lived there. And I know that sounds really nice, but it wasn't all that great because I was really scared and I wasn't comfortable. It was really pretty, but it scared me. I peed my pants in my chambers all the time. So she called me like, I don't know, like little beast or something like that. I swear to God that castle was haunted. 100% haunted. Because I remember one night, like, so there was like a little music room where like there was a piano and then chairs and stuff like that. And one night I wake up and I hear the piano playing downstairs and I was like, what's going on? So I get up and I walk downstairs and right as I step into that like little music room thing, this literally just stopped. Like it stopped playing. And like as I got closer to the room, I could like the music was obviously getting louder because I was getting closer to the room, so I was hearing better and blah blah blah. And then it just stopped, like out of nowhere, and I was like, wait, what is going on? So that made me scared for my life. So we lived in a little chateau for like about a month or so. So my sister and I came here before my mom did. And once my mom got to the States, and we stayed with our father, obviously. And once my mom got to the States, we all sat down. My mom, my stepmom, my dad, they were like, who are you going to live with? So they made my sister and I choose, and we were like, my sister chose my dad, and I chose my dad too, because I didn't want to be away from my sister. But honestly, if I could have chosen, I would have probably been really petty and been like, France, like, what the fuck? The transition here was not easy. It's just, I couldn't really speak English that well, and I was thrown into a school where, like, you know, no one spoke French, except for this one teacher. She was Canadian French and spoke Canadian French. Although we couldn't always understand one another because Canadian French is different than French. But she really did help me, though, with the transition. So while the other kids, you know, went out to recess and played and all that, I was in the classroom with my second grade teacher and this French Canadian teacher, you know, like learning how to read and write. So my second grade teacher would like go to her and be like, and like ask her for help with me because, you know, my second grade teacher didn't always understand what I was saying to her. The third grade was a little harder for me. That's when I started getting bullied. The bullying wasn't like awful, but definitely didn't help with my transition to the States. That's for sure. It was really hard for me to find friends. I was made fun of what I looked like and how I talked. It wasn't like awful. It was just this one guy who was like really, like, he found out where I lived, and every Halloween he would like come to my house and be like, oh, does Mia live here? And yeah, he kind of sort of terrorized me. Not like crazy, but definitely wasn't fun. And I ended up finding like these two girls, and I was friends with them, but you know, I was still getting bullied, and so I thought that if I changed friends, then I would stop being bullied. So I stopped being friends with them so that I could be friends with like people who didn't get bullied, because I thought that that would prevent me from getting bullied, which isn't true. And I felt like a complete ass for doing that. I ended up finding this girl who became my best friend, and she kind of sort of had the same thing as me. Her parents are from Israel. Her sister was born in Israel, except for her. She was born in the States, like me. She also got bullied, and then throughout middle school, we were really close friends. Going on to middle school, people started thinking that it was cool, I guess, that I was from France. Although, and I started being like, yeah, I'm from France, it's a fun time, blah, blah, blah. But then people, like they would get mad anytime I talked about being from France, and I was like, why are you mad at me for being from somewhere that I can't, like, control? Well, eventually, I just stopped talking about being from France. So then I did my best to, like, be as, like, American as possible. Well, I tried my best to seem as, like I had a normal American childhood, which I didn't. I now realize is perfectly normal and fine, because there's a lot of kids in the United States where like they grew up in a household that had a different culture, or they grew up in a different country and then moved here. Yeah, middle school was just a really hard time for me, because that's when I started struggling with a lot of mental health issues, and I definitely started feeling like I didn't belong in my family just because I wasn't born in France, and that really affected me. And you know, like not being able to speak fluently in French also really affected me. But then once I got to high school, I started meeting people who had the same story as me, who like were from different countries or had family in different countries. And it was really nice because I finally felt like I fit in. Yeah, but I still struggle. Like, I really miss my family from France. I haven't seen them in almost 10 years now, which is really hard for me because my sister got to go to France last year and see her family again, and I was like super happy for her, obviously. I also really want to see Garde and Lorraine again. So after it takes me 5,000 years to edit this, I'm going to my mom's this weekend. Whoops. This is a good look. Kind of proud of myself. Any hoosies, I will see you guys. Bye.
For something they don't know like how to do it.
Well, there's no form. You don't go on the State Department's website and say.
So that's fine.
Am I pretty now?
I'm leaving.